Because we will fight a never-ending war until our last drop of blood against anyone who tries to attack our country. Burkina Faso just said they are starting a $200 billion road project. That's more money than their whole country makes in a year. How is that even possible? And why are China and the US suddenly paying attention? Let's find out. It started with no big celebrations, no parades, and definitely no news reporters from Western countries. Just a quiet announcement from the government, a few small news reports, and then suddenly tons of activity started happening all across Burkina Faso. Construction machines, hundreds of them, started moving out to every part of the country, from the north to the south. Whole villages stopped what they were doing to watch as bulldozers started making flat paths where no one thought roads would ever be built. Soon the number became impossible to ignore: $200 billion. That's what President Ibrahim Traore's government said it would spend on the newly started Faso Mebo Initiative program. This is a national plan to completely rebuild all of Burkina Faso's roads. To help you understand how big this is, the country only makes about $20 billion in a whole year. This wasn't just bold, it was something no one thought was possible. But it wasn't a lie. Just weeks after they announced it, over 900 heavy construction machines were bought, shipped to the country, and put to work. They didn't rent them, they owned them. They weren't run by workers from other countries, but by local engineers and young people they trained. Videos taken by drones from rural areas showed an amazing change happening. Lines of road-making machines clearing paths through the grasslands, remote communities seeing paved roads for the first time ever, and teams mapping out road networks that would eventually cover thousands of miles. What's more, this was not a project controlled by the World Bank, the IMF, or help from foreign countries. No Western company logos were anywhere to be seen. The project is completely owned and led by Burkina Faso, though China is quietly helping as a technical advisor behind the scenes. But even Chinese engineers, who are used to huge projects all over the world, have said they are shocked at how big and independent this effort is. For many years, Africa has been the place of big promises and failed infrastructure dreams. But something about this feels different. There are no ribbon-cutting ceremonies put on for donors. No small test projects were used to see if it would work. This is full action with an urgent wartime speed. Still, the question remains: how did a country facing security threats, money problems, and decades of instability manage to pull this off without anyone seeing it coming? Sources close to the president hint at deep planning months ahead of time, with Traore setting aside billions from gold money, smart partnerships, and gathering domestic resources all away from international attention. They were building the engine before they even announced the race, one analyst said. But beyond the money, the size of the organization is what's making people pay attention. This isn't a show project limited to the capital city or one single road. Every region is involved. Every province has a goal. In some areas, roads are being built at night with heavy security to keep moving forward in regions where rebels might try to damage things. And the goals don't stop at roads. Built into the Faso Mebo blueprint are plans to connect the road system with farming centers, bringing electricity to rural areas, schools and clinics, forming a physical network of development that could, if finished, change what we think is possible for a West African country. Critics are waiting for it to fall apart because it's too ambitious, but so far the movement is speeding up. And behind closed doors, even doubtful governments are now rethinking their attitude toward Burkina Faso, wondering whether this is just a temporary show or the early signs of a continental change. Burkina Faso may have once been overlooked on the map, but now all eyes are focused, watching each mile of road like it's writing a new chapter in Africa's history. And that leads to the next mystery. What exactly is the Faso Mebo Initiative? What its structure, and how did it appear with such explosive force? Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and histories are kept safe and made louder. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The $200 billion announcement might have amazed the world, but what lies underneath it is even more extraordinary. The Faso Mebo Initiative isn't a flashy mega project put together for headlines. It's a deeply structured, homegrown machine of national change. And the deeper you go, the more radical it becomes. Most people imagine road projects as a matter of cement, tar, and miles. But what President Traore has shown is something completely different. This is not just a road-building exercise, it's a rebuilding of how the state thinks. By the way, we have launched merchandise that honors the African leaders who are taking a stand for Africa. Check them out to show you also stand with loyal sons of Africa, no matter where you are. Unlike typical government programs, Faso Mebo didn't come with big launch ceremonies or foreign consultants showing PowerPoint presentations. Instead, it appeared fully armed with equipment, regional task forces, and what insiders call command precision. That's because the initiative isn't working through the usual civilian ministries that tend to move slowly. It's running under a wartime development framework, a centralized action-first system built to do things, not negotiate.
There are no loose ends, no overlapping departments. Every bulldozer has a map, every team has a deadline, and every village has a purpose tied to a road or it doesn't get one. Even the name Faso Mebo signals something deeper. Translated through regional languages, it loosely means the path to ourselves, or our return route. It reflects not only a physical road, but a mental one, a reconnection with independence. After decades of priorities decided by outsiders, this initiative is designed to make sure every step forward is decided from within. Every mile built is a message that Burkina Faso is now deciding its direction without approval from Paris, Washington, or Brussels. The way it works is unlike anything seen in the region. Orders are given not in slow government memos, but in command chains. Each zone, whether Sahel, Cascades, or Center-West, is given monthly infrastructure targets. Reports are made through GPS tracking. Drones watch construction activity, and disciplinary action happens immediately if corruption or delay is found. Multiple regional officials have quietly been fired for not doing their job. This is not the culture of relaxed projects padded with time extensions. This is execution at the pace of national survival. What makes the initiative even more surprising is its refusal to copy past models. It borrows ideas from China's Belt and Road, but throws out the playbook of debt-fueled infrastructure. The roads are not being built by foreign companies or with conditional grants. Instead, Burkina Faso is using money from its gold exports, internal tax restructuring, and strategic asset reserves. There is no begging bowl here, no IMF fingerprint. This is money independence in motion, quietly asserting itself through miles of gravel, tar, and workers. The workers, too, are locally sourced, not just for construction, but for design, planning, and oversight. University graduates are being pulled directly into project teams, trained on the ground in engineering and logistics. Some of them had never seen a construction vehicle before. Now they're operating graders and road rollers under military-style discipline. Others are being fast-tracked into technical leadership roles, replacing the old habit of outsourcing everything to consultants flown in from abroad. But the real uniqueness of Faso Mebo lies in its thinking. Roads are not being placed randomly. They are carefully aligned with sites of farming importance, supply chain bottlenecks, school gaps, and security zones. The plan is deliberate, almost surgical. Every region is assigned not just miles, but also goals to increase school attendance, lower deaths of mothers during childbirth, and expand food distribution. These are not roads to nowhere. They are arteries of a future state. Perhaps most radical of all is the long-term vision built into the project. Unlike Western models that work in 5-year election cycles, Faso Mebo is framed in 25-year stages. It doesn't plan for applause, it plans for permanence. That alone separates it from the donor-driven, pilot-heavy frameworks that have haunted African development for decades. Burkina Faso is no longer experimenting. It's building relentlessly and with purpose. The world may still be staring at the number $200 billion in disbelief, but what they should be watching is the structure behind it. Because this is no ordinary road plan. It is the physical expression of a new governance model, built on self-reliance, urgency, and the refusal to wait for permission. And the results are already unfolding. But how do these roads translate into real-world benefits for farmers, merchants, workers, and the everyday Burkina Faso person? The answer lies in a single word: flow. Flow of goods, of people, of workers, of ideas. And that flow is creating an economic pulse that wasn't there before. In a country where poor roads have historically turned simple trips into multi-day journeys, the appearance of wide, navigable highways is doing more than making movement easier. It's reprogramming the national economy from the ground up. What used to be considered remote is now being reclassified as reachable. Villages that were once off-grid are suddenly logistics hubs. Farmland that once went unused due to being unreachable is now being harvested, packed, and sold in the same week. The economic impact of a road is rarely seen as dramatic, but in Burkina Faso, it's earth-shaking. For years, transportation costs ate up nearly half the value of goods in rural areas. A sack of onions might sell for 5,000 CFA in the city, but the cost of getting it there across rutted dirt roads, broken bridges, and seasonal floods made the whole thing pointless. Farmers were often forced to sell locally for very little money or let crops rot. That's changing. Paved roads change everything. Reports from newly connected regions show a spike in small-scale farming activity. Cooperatives are forming around key highways. Grain is being stored in better facilities. Foods that go bad quickly are moving faster. And women, who often control local markets, are among the biggest winners. They now transport, sell, and restock with a speed that multiplies profits. But the change isn't just in farming. It's visible in the rise of roadside small economies. Entire settlements are sprouting up along the new pavement like green shoots after rain. Small repair shops, food stalls, fuel stations, and motorcycle depots have begun clustering near intersections and rest points. In places that were silent at nightfall, light bulbs now glow, powered by solar hubs being installed alongside road infrastructure.
Spending. Mobile money transfers have doubled in some newly connected zones. Markets once held twice a week are now open daily. There's a noticeable redistribution of income and opportunity, not by government order, but by direction. The road decides where the money goes. The ripple effect extends even further. With connectivity comes migration, not outward, but inward. Skilled tradespeople from larger towns are moving into secondary cities where demand for services is exploding. Teachers are more willing to accept jobs in rural schools when they know a paved road connects them to hospitals and family. Even small businesses in the capital are moving to less crowded regions, a reversal of the urban drain that's plagued African cities for decades. And then there's trade. Burkina Faso may be landlocked, but it's strategically placed. With proper roads, it can become a transit state linking Mali, Niger, Togo, and Côte d'Ivoire. Already informal cross-border trading is increasing. Traders who once feared muddy detours and robbery-prone bush paths are now using structured corridors. The country is starting to feel less like a broken chain of rural fragments and more like a connected economic organism. What's important to note is that none of this required external recalibration. It wasn't the IMF that made farmers rich or the EU that opened new markets. It was a domestic decision to lay down tar and with it, a new direction. But with new movements comes new vulnerabilities, and that brings us to an even more strategic layer of the Faso Mebo plan. security. Because these roads aren't just carrying goods, they're carrying the state. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. With trucks now roaring through old dust trails and markets expanding at every paved intersection, one might think the Faso Mebo Initiative is purely an economic miracle. But beneath the development lies a more strategic calculation. These roads were also built to fight, not with bullets, but with reach, with speed, and with presence. In a country long stalked by armed rebels, this infrastructure is quietly changing the balance of power. Burkina Faso has battled rebel threats for years, especially in its northern and eastern regions where foreign-trained militants, bandits, and separatist elements exploited one simple advantage: isolation. Dirt paths, broken terrain, and weather-dependent tracks made entire regions unreachable. By the time security forces were alerted to an attack, the perpetrators were gone, swallowed by geography. These weren't just logistical nightmares, they were gaps in sovereignty. Now the terrain is shifting, literally. Fresh pavement is extending into areas that haven't seen a government presence in decades. But once took 4 hours over rugged ground, now takes 40 minutes by highway. And with that speed comes a change in posture. Troops can be deployed, threats can be contained, and intelligence can move through civilian channels with far greater ease. Several outposts previously under threat have reported a complete reversal of rebel activity since major roads reached them. The enemy didn't retreat because of more weapons. They retreated because the state arrived first. And it's not just the army benefiting. Communities once forced to negotiate with armed groups for movement, trade, or even access to water are now choosing sides. And increasingly, they're choosing the state. Why? Because the roads didn't just bring soldiers, they brought trust. Mobile clinics now show up on schedule. Supply chains deliver food in times of drought. Schools receive teaching materials on time. In short, the state is no longer an abstract idea in Ouagadougou. It's a visible, functioning network of services arriving at speed. There's a psychological warfare element too. In areas long abandoned, the sight of machinery, graders, rollers, and surveyors is disorienting. Entire generations grew up without ever seeing state-led construction. For them, governance came in the form of NGO tents or UN convoys. But now the state has its trucks, its logos, and its people trained and confident. That visibility has power. It signals that Burkina Faso is not waiting to be saved. It is reinforcing its claim to every inch of itself. Even the timing of road deployment reflects a security logic. Before major paving operations begin in unstable areas, community liaison officers are sent to negotiate cooperation, identify risks, and establish micro-level monitoring. Local youth are hired to assist the construction crews, creating not just employment, but buy-in. Villages are no longer bystanders to the roads. They become stakeholders. In a few cases, elders have even helped identify militant hideouts preemptively, protecting the very roads that connect them to opportunity. And yet, the fight is far from over. There have been attacks, especially on night convoys and isolated equipment sites, but Traore's administration expected this. That's why the project includes mobile defense units, assigned specifically to protect key infrastructure. Think of them as a hybrid between engineers and infantry, building and defending the arteries of the state simultaneously. This is what makes Faso Mebo so unique. It understands that in Africa, infrastructure isn't neutral. It's contested terrain, and whoever controls it, controls the future. Interestingly, this new security strategy isn't being sold with grand speeches. There's no performative chest beating, just action, quiet, coordinated, and deliberate. But the message is clear. These roads don't just connect, they protect. Still, with this kind of military-civilian integration, with billions invested and borders blurring between development and defense, an uncomfortable question begins to surface. Is Burkina Faso becoming a model of stability or a target of its ambition? By now, it's clear that the Faso Mebo Initiative is more than just infrastructure. It's a declaration of intent, a message carved into the very soil of Burkina Faso. We will not be broken, and we
not be controlled. But as the roads snake outward, connecting provinces, markets, and conflict zones, something else is spreading with them. influence. And influence in world politics is never a quiet affair. Within months of the initiative's rollout, whispers began circulating through neighboring capitals. Mali, Niger, Togo, and even parts of Ghana have reportedly sent representatives to study the model. Not because it's flawless, but because it's fearless. A government under sanctions, facing insurgency, and without traditional donor backing, just committed to a $200 billion mega project and is executing it with military discipline and visible results. That doesn't just raise eyebrows, it challenges assumptions. Western institutions, accustomed to having the final say on African development timelines, are now in an awkward position. Here is a state acting outside the script, ignoring World Bank procedures, sidestepping donor frameworks, and still delivering tangible outcomes. That makes Burkina Faso a problem, not because it's failing, but because it's succeeding without them. Even more disruptive is how fast the Traore government is exporting the model ideologically. In closed-door meetings with other Sahelian leaders, officials are already proposing a regional infrastructure pact modeled on Faso Mebo, where states pool resources, co-manage construction fleets, and coordinate security corridors across borders. If that gains traction, it could lead to a Sahel-led transport and defense bloc free from NATO oversight or French strategic influence. In other words, a West Africa that no longer asks for permission. This is precisely why international media coverage has remained oddly muted. There's very little appetite in Brussels or Washington to celebrate a Burkina Faso revolution that cuts out their financing, ignores their contractors, and proves that Africa can handle billion-dollar projects on its terms. And yet, underground, the model is already resonating from Kinshasa to Khartoum. But with this rising influence comes risk. Burkina Faso is not only building roads, it's building expectations. And expectations attract scrutiny, sabotage, and subversion. Multiple intelligence leaks suggest that attempts are already underway to destabilize the initiative's logistics chain through economic pressure, political interference, or even attempts to co-opt key officials. That's why Traore's inner circle has become famously closed and disciplined, shielding the operation like a classified mission. Every mile of progress is treated as a target, and every local victory must be guarded from international disruption. There's also the internal risk of overreach. Mobilizing $200 billion, no matter how well planned, will always carry the danger of bottlenecks, shortages, or mismanagement. If inflation spikes, or if workers go unpaid, the public support that now powers the initiative could turn against it. That's why the administration is moving with quiet urgency, delivering results not in speeches but in visible miles. Delays are corrected quickly, mistakes are buried fast. The only thing that moves forward is the road. And perhaps that's the genius and the gamble of Faso Mebo. It doesn't rely on spin, it relies on momentum. As long as that momentum holds, it builds not only highways but legitimacy. In an era when democracy itself is often reduced to ballots without outcomes, Burkina Faso is offering a different idea. Infrastructure as governance, not in theory, but in pavement. Not as a campaign promise, but as a contract fulfilled. What's emerging is a paradox. To some, Traore is becoming a model of post-colonial leadership, firm, focused, and unapologetically sovereign. To others, he's becoming a dangerous symbol, a reminder that Africa doesn't need saving, it needs space. In either case, the world is being forced to look again and look closer. If Burkina Faso can, what is the other nation's excuse? Are they not willing to change? Let us know in the comments section. What do you think Traore did differently? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.